Yes, in this session, we will talk about Chinese American food, which is a unique food, by the way. And of course, Chinese Americans were the first and earliest and largest Asian immigrants in the US today. And even though so many Chinese were in the US for such a long time, ever since from 1840s. So in California, Chinese and white Europeans arrived almost at the same time. And in those days, there was no passport, no visa. So if you are in California, you are American. Okay? So Chinese were the earliest Asians who reached the west coast of America. And they lived there since 1840s. But white Americans, they did not enjoy Chinese food until nearly in the early 20th century. Because for such a long time, the Chinese were very much confined to Chinatowns, and Chinese immigration was stopped, totally stopped by 1882 in America through the Chinese Exclusion Act. By the way, this was not only in America. Canada earlier, and Australia, New Zealand, almost the same time, they all stopped Chinese immigrants because of rapid increase of Chinese who became a threat to white European working class as a competitor. So this was a global phenomenon. By 1880s, every country stopped Chinese immigrants. And it was at the same time that Europeans developed the prejudice against the Chinese and also racism toward the Chinese. And Chinese were considered everywhere in the West as a morally inferior and dirty, unsanitary, and they all generally shunned Chinese food. Actually, there were very stupid rumors that Chinese were using rat in their food and so on, which is totally not true. So anyway, this prevented the mainstream members of American society to enjoy Chinese food. And meanwhile, in Chinatowns, there were many restaurants, mainly to serve Chinese population, but cooks were mainly men, not women. Why? Because in America and Canada and Australia and New Zealand, all these Western immigration countries, they, out of effort to control Chinese population, they did not allow Chinese women to migrate. Not 100%, but so that's why there was a huge gender ratio between men and women in Chinatown. And so this Chinese men started to cook Chinese American food, not women. And as I said, initially people avoided Chinese food, but very quickly, in a sense, Chinese food gained popularity. Probably one of the first white Europeans who frequently ate Chinese food were Jewish immigrants. And some poor artists in big cities such as New York. And why Jewish people? Because especially around the Christmas time, or because most Americans are Christians, they would not work during Christmas. And Jews, they don't know what Christmas is because they follow their own religious calendar. And around Christmas time, Chinese restaurants in Chinatown were the only restaurant that was open in America, so Jewish people would go and enjoy the food. And by the 1920s, however, Chinese food represented as a chop suey. In those days, Chinese food was only known as a chop suey. Well, this chop suey is a stir-fried vegetables and meat with some sauce, Chinese sauce, such as oyster sauce or soy sauce and so on. This is very simple food from Chinese perspective, but that gained enormous popularity among the general public in America. So in this image, at top you see that this was sometime in early in 1920s. Now Chinese food advertisement on local newspaper is only 95 cents, less than $1, and you can eat as much as you want. And that's chopsy. And chopsy became so popular. In the next image below, at the bottom, you see that they even made chopsy sauce and chopsy in can, so that the ordinary Americans could enjoy chopsy even at home. But anyway, whenever this foreign food became popular, there is a cultural aspect as well. Because in those days, 1920s, eating chopsy, especially if you can use with a chopstick, now that's very cool, because this is a sign of cultural sophistication. Not all people, but for some people. So there appeared some learned intellectuals and artists and cool people started to enjoy chopsy. And Chinese restaurants were sprouting all over the major cities in America, and soon there appeared instant chopsy, as I said, for home cooking, and which is a great evidence that how popular chopsy was. And by the 1970s, now in America, new Chinese immigrants started to come. And now these new Chinese immigrants are very different from the old Chinese immigrants who mostly came from two provinces of Guangdong and Fujian. And they stopped by the end of the 19th century until the end of the Second World War. But after the Second World War, not immediately many Chinese came into America, but by the 1970s, large number of Chinese immigrants came not from mainland China, which was a communist country, of course, from Hong Kong and Taiwan, and also some Southeast Asian countries such as Singapore and Malaysia. And now they brought new Chinese cuisine, which is different from the existing Chinese cuisine. And they made Chinese restaurants even more diverse. And by then, Chinese food already became nearly mainstream American food. Now, what made Chinese food so successful? There are some factors. First of all, historical factors that Chinese from Guangdong and Fujian, they all have some trading background of Chinese diaspora. Chinese are very good at trading and selling and buying and commercial activities and so on. So just like Jews, Jewish people, and also Chinese have a very strong family tradition. So the father and mother and children, they all work together. And this is great for small self-employment business. And also, Chinese people, they have ethnic capital, which is also called the social capital, which means they have strong family structure, as I said, but they also formed Chinatowns. Okay? So within Chinatowns, people have access to inexpensive and reliable and trustworthy labor, because even today, in any Chinatown, you see that Chinese people from same hometowns, and they trust each other. You can lend money and you can hire them in a very flexible condition. And also, the Chinatowns give access to community finance, mutual trust, and support. So when someone can't work and can't make any money, and they will get help. And that's why Chinatown itself played a very important role in making Chinese food readily available everywhere. And Chinese genius in business, Chinese food was the first takeout food in American history. We all know this famous paper box. Actually, that was originally from East Coast America, and that was used for oyster, because East Coast near New York and Boston area, they produce a lot of oysters, and so European Americans, they used that paper box to pack oysters. And Chinese adopted that and use it as a takeout food. So here in this image, you see that at top, that's a chop suey restaurant in London in late 19th century. And below, you see that two Jewish men enjoying Chinese food very impressively using chopstick. And as I said, some artists also enjoy, poor artists in New York enjoy the chop suey. And this famous painting by Edward Hopper, and in his painting, two ladies in 1920s, they are having tea and having conversation, and behind, through the window, you see the big sign of chop suey. And the image on the right, that's a typical chop suey that was served in those days. And today, people don't use the term chop suey anymore, because chop suey itself is a Cantonese, and maybe in Mandarin it could be chap sai or something. But anyway, that's what chop suey is. And it's just stir-fried. You just put just any vegetables and some meat and sauce, and you stir-fry, and voila, it is a chop suey. Very easy to cook from Chinese perspective. And also, because Chinese diaspora are spread out throughout the whole world already in late 19th century, so the Chinese people who went to Latin America, particularly to Peru, and they left very visible culinary impact on Peruvian food culture, which is called the chifa food. So this is a typical chifa food mixed with some local food, but basically stir fry and fried rice and deep fried chicken and so on. In our third session, we will talk about the popularities of Japanese, Vietnamese, and Thai food in America.